Greg Doucette is 100% wrong and Ben Patrick is 100% right. You absolutely want to squat with your knees past your toes. But also, Ben Patrick is 100% wrong and Greg Doucette is 100% right. You absolutely want to avoid squatting with your knees past your toes. Why? Well, it's going to come down to your goal. The number one question you have to ask yourself is, hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Steven here with Team Euphoric, and today I'm going to be clearing up some misconceptions when it comes to the squat exercise. There's a lot of contradictory opinions, and some people are going to tell you that you should squat with your knees past your toes. Other people are going to tell you to avoid at all costs. You want to maintain a vertical shin. And who's right? Well, it's really going to be dependent on what exactly you're trying to accomplish. If you are going to listen to somebody like Greg Doucette, his opinion is that
just because you can squat past your toes doesn't mean you should. When you start a squat, make sure you bend back at the hips first. You do not want to squat forward and make your knees go past your toes.
And then on the flip side, if you were to listen to somebody like Ben Patrick, his opinion when it comes to squatting is that
you want to do knee over toe exercises?
So who's right? Greg Doucette or Ben Patrick? Well, I already did a video last year on how to squat properly step by step, and I'm going to include a link right up over here to that video. But with regard to the actual squat exercise, Greg Doucette is 100% wrong and Ben Patrick is 100% right. You absolutely want to squat with your knees past your toes. But also, Ben Patrick is 100% wrong and Greg Doucette is 100% right. You absolutely want to avoid squatting with your knees past your toes. Why? Well, it's going to come down to your goal. The number one question you have to ask yourself is, why exactly are you squatting and what exactly are you trying to accomplish? Let's say that you are trying to improve the way that you look. Pretty much whatever your goal is when it comes to working out, it's going to be lumped into one of three categories. You either want to look better, feel better, or perform better. When it comes to looking better, do you want to lose fat or do you want to build muscle? Let's say you want to lose fat. When you want to lose fat, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to being in a calorie deficit. There's absolutely no way around that. So you would want to pick the version of the squat that is going to burn the most amount of calories. And when it comes to squatting, that is going to be a vertical shin squat, so more of the powerlifting style. And the reason for this is when it comes to energy expenditure, when you end up doing a weight training workout, the amount of calories that you burn is going to be the mass that you are lifting times the acceleration of the movement times the distance that you are traveling. So when you do a vertical shin squat, your actual acceleration is going to be quicker, and also you're going to be able to lift a lot more mass. And the reason for that is because when you do vertical shins, you are primarily going to be using your glutes and your hamstrings, and your glutes and hamstrings are predominantly going to be your phasic muscles. Phasic muscles are going to be predominantly made up of fast twitch muscle fibers, which means they're meant to be explosive. They're meant for speed, power. So you're going to be able to lift a lot more weight if you end up doing a vertical shin. Whereas if you end up doing a knee over toe squat, your knee over toe squat is going to emphasize your quadriceps, and your quadriceps are primarily a tonic muscle. That is going to be your postural muscle. And typically those muscles are going to be primarily slow twitch, and they're not going to be really good for when it comes to things like strength, speed, and power. They're going to be better for more endurance type of activity. So if you are trying to lose fat, doing a vertical shin squat would be preferable because you're going to be using more glutes and hamstrings, which means you're going to be able to lift more mass and you're going to be able to be more explosive throughout the actual exercise. But let's say it is your goal to build muscle. Well, what exactly are you trying to build? If you are trying to build your glutes and your hamstrings, then absolutely you would want to listen to Greg Doucette and you would want to do a vertical shin squat, because when you do a vertical shin squat, you're going to be emphasizing more the glutes and the hamstrings. Whereas let's say you want to do a quad dominant workout. If you are trying to build your quads, then you would want to listen to Ben Patrick and do a knee over toe squat, because when you do a knee over toes, you're going to get more flexion of the knee, which means you're going to get more myofascial tension in the quadricep muscles, which means you're going to recruit more muscle fibers. So if you want to build the glutes and hamstrings, listen to Greg Doucette and go vertical shin. If you want to build the quads, listen to Ben Patrick and go knees over toes. That's it in terms of looking better. What if you want to feel better? Well, what exactly are you trying to feel better about? Are you trying to decrease pain? Are you trying to improve your posture, improve function? Because each of those are going to be a little bit different. Let's take a look at the ground up when we're looking at the knee over toe squat. When we do knees over toes, we're going to get greater dorsiflexion in the ankle, we're going to get greater knee flexion in the knee, and we're going to get greater femur flexion in the actual hip. Whereas when we end up doing a vertical shin squat, we're going to have very limited dorsiflexion. We're not going to get as much knee flexion, and we're not going to have as much flexion in the actual femur at the hip. So your range of motion is going to be a lot greater when we do a knee over toe squat. So if you are trying to improve the function of your body and also improve your posture, doing knees over toes is going to be much more preferable. And then the other thing is, are you trying to eliminate pain? Something like low back pain. A lot of people, when they develop back pain, it's going to be due to dysfunction in the lumbopelvifemoral complex. That is where your lumbar spine meets the pelvis, meets the femur. And one of the most common postural dysfunctions is going to be excessive anteversion of the pelvis. Ideally for men, anywhere from 4 to 7 degrees of anteversion or anterior pelvic tilt is going to be acceptable. And then for women, anywhere from 7 to 11 degrees of anteversion is going to be considered acceptable. Whenever it goes beyond that range of motion, then that's when it's considered dysfunctional, and most people are going to have excessive anteversion of the pelvis. In pretty much 17 years of assessing people, I can only think of 3 people off the top of my head who didn't have excessive anteversion of the pelvis. So it's going to be very, very common. And if you don't do a knee over toe squat, when you do a vertical shin, what you want to do is you want to hinge back with the hips. When you hinge back with the hips, what's going to happen is you're going to exacerbate that anteversion of the pelvis, and that could lead to a lot more compression in the lumbar spine, because when you go into anteversion of the pelvis, then the posterior aspect of the lumbar spine, it's going to go into more extension, which means you're going to get a lot more compression of the intervertebral disc. So if you do have something like low back pain or postural dysfunction, you would not want to squat vertical shins. You would want to squat knees over toes if it is your main objective to decrease your pain and also improve your posture. And then another thing is, if you do have low back pain, if you are doing a vertical shin as opposed to knees over squat, when you do knees over toes, you're going to be in a more upright posture. So when you are more upright, that means that the bar is going to be closer to you in terms of your center of gravity. Whereas when you do a vertical shin squat, you're going to be hinging forward more at the waist. When you hinge forward, that means the pivot point or the lever length between your pelvis and the actual bar itself, it's going to be projecting a lot more forward, which means there's going to be a lot more tension on the lumbar spine. So if you do have issues with regard to low back pain, you wouldn't want to do a vertical shin, because you're going to be exacerbating that anteversion of the pelvis, and you're also going to be creating a lot more stress on the lumbar spine from leaning forward. So you would want to do knees over toes. And then the other thing is, if you do have pain, you may be tempted to avoid knee over toe squats because it might exacerbate pain, but rather than avoiding it, what you would want to do is regress the squat pattern. So rather than going right into a knee over toe squat, you can start with something like a prone squat, then progress it to a kneeling squat, front foot elevated split squat, Bulgarian split squat, regular standing squat, overhead squat, pistol squat. And I have a video, I came up with it last year, and it was 20 different barbell progressions for the squat pattern. I'm going to put a link right up over here if you haven't seen it. But in terms of wanting to feel better, you're going to be better off doing knee over toes as opposed to a vertical shin. And then the last thing is, what if you don't really care about looking better, you don't care about feeling better, all you want to do is perform better? Well, when it comes to performance, there are 8 biomotor abilities that are required for athletic performance, and that is going to be speed, strength, power, endurance, flexibility, agility, coordination, and balance. And when it comes to those 8 biomotor abilities, I'm going to be focusing on 4 of them for the purpose of the squat. We're going to be focusing on strength, speed, power, and flexibility. Let's say you are trying to be either a power lifter versus an Olympic lifter. We're going to take those 2 sports. Well, when we're looking at powerlifting, the main objective is to lift the most amount of weight possible with the actual squat exercise. And for that, you're going to want to maintain a vertical shin, because when we maintain a vertical shin, once again, we're going to be prioritizing glute and hamstring activation over the quadriceps. And once again, your glutes and your hamstrings are primarily going to be fast twitch muscle groups, which means they're going to be designed for strength, speed, and also explosiveness. Whereas your quadriceps, when we go knees over toes, you're going to be using more quadriceps, and your vastus medialis, your vastus lateralis, and your vastus intermedius are going to be primarily slow twitch muscle fibers, which means they're not really going to be good for strength and power. Rather, they're going to be better for endurance. So if you are trying to do something like break a world record or just lift the most amount of weight possible, or if your sport requires a level of relative or maximum strength, then you would be better off doing a vertical shin squat. Whereas in something like Olympic lifting, when you are doing Olympic lifting, you would be better off incorporating both the knee over toe squat and also the vertical shin squat, because when we end up doing the Olympic lift, if you take a look at the snatch as an example, at the start of the position, your shins are basically vertical, and then you have a snatch grip, you're getting into a deadlift, and you're basically doing a deadlift into an upright row, into an overhead squat, and then you're standing up into the overhead squat. So you're starting out with vertical shins when you're in that deadlift position, and then once you get the bar overhead, then your knees go past your toes, and then you have to lift the weight with your knees past your toes. So for something like Olympic lifting, you would be better off alternating and combining both the knee over toe squat and doing also a vertical shin squat. So depending depending on the phase of training that you're in, that is where you would want to incorporate those types of programs. And then when it comes to something like flexibility, as we've already established earlier, you would want to do knees over toes because you're going to get greater range of motion in all of the different joints. When you do a knee over toe squat, you're going to get greater dorsiflexion in the ankle, you're going to get greater flexion in the knee, you're going to get greater flexion in the hip. So if you are trying to improve your flexibility, or if you are performing a sport that requires a high level of amount of flexibility, then you're going to be better off doing the knee over toe squat as opposed to the vertical shin squat. But those are just a few of the ways that you can determine whether or not you want to do the knee over toe squat or if you want to do the vertical shin squat. If it is your objective to lose fat, or if it is objective to build your glutes, build your hamstrings, or if you are trying to lift the most amount of weight possible, so your strength primarily requires strength, speed, or power, then you would want to do the vertical shin squat. And then if you are trying to either build up your quads, or if you want to feel better, so you have issues with low back pain, hip pain, knee pain, ankle pain, foot pain, or if you have any type of joint pain whatsoever, then you would want to do the knee over toe squat. And same thing with if you're trying to improve your flexibility. So depending on your goal, that's going to dictate which version of the squat you're going to want to do. But that's pretty much it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to smash that like button so I know to keep making these types of videos in the future. And if you're either new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, as I will be uploading new videos every single day. That's it for today's video. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you again tomorrow.